The number used to be 43. Within the last week, it's gone up to 52 million Americans are automatically going to get a ballot, whether they ask for it or not. They moved away, dead, doesn't matter. They're going to get the ballot. 52 million. 44 million Americans are getting absentee ballot applications without asking for them. So let's see, that's 52, 44. 96 million Americans are going to be getting ballots or absentee ballot applications. I want to talk about the elections briefly, because the president gave a shout out to Judicial Watch, actually two of them, one on Maria Bartiromo's show yesterday, and also during a press conference about our work in California, where we settled a election rolls cleanup case with the LA County and the state of California that requires LA County to remove up to 1.6 million names from the rolls. And the president highlights that work as support for his concern about mail-in ballots, which is, I think, a concern well worth, that is well placed, I should say, well founded. Did you know, by the way, and this is the number that we ought to focus on. Let me click it up here. The number used to be 43. Within the last week, it's gone up to 52 million Americans are automatically going to get a ballot, whether they ask for it or not. They moved away, dead, doesn't matter. They're going to get the ballot. 52 million. 44 million Americans are getting absentee ballot applications without asking for them. So let's see, that's 52, 44. 96 million Americans are going to be getting ballots or absentee ballot applications. Obviously, that's an opportunity for fraud of enormous proportions, especially when you combine that with ballot harvesting in states like California and the lack of security measures in mail-in balloting, the dirty voting rolls that Judicial Watch has uncovered, and not only in California, but elsewhere in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, we found nearly 2 million extra names on the rolls, just in those two states alone. And of course, the left is still trying to undermine election security. In Rhode Island, they had absentee ballot requirements, I think, that required the signature of 2 witnesses. Well, the left undid that, and the Supreme Court let it go by. So now it will be easier to steal votes and steal elections in Rhode Island. And now the post office is admitting what I've been telling you, that their mails aren't reliable and they can't be sure that they'll get the ballots in the polling place in time. Now, the response of the left is to pretend, whoa, we have to give the post office more money to make sure it happens. It ain't going to happen. They can have all the money in the world. They can't certify that your ballots will get to the polling place on time. They can't certify your ballots will get there at all. And certainly if you hand them to ballot harvesters, that would be a misjudgment on your part, frankly. I mean, some states allow them to, if it's, you want to give something to your husband to deliver, a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot, that's appropriate, a close family member or something like that. Giving your ballot to a stranger to deliver on your behalf, like they are able to do in California, So I suspect chaos on election day and beyond. It's not going to be election day. It's going to be election months. As I said, it can go into the Congress if it's not figured out. As I talked to you about, I think I talked to you about, there was this left-wing planning project. They were war-gaming out these scenarios about post-election fights. And of course, they had this, these ridiculous ideas about what President Trump was going to do, his take over the country with the military, which is just absurd. But the leftist war game, the Biden war game, run by top Democratic operative John Podesta, they're talking about having states threaten to secede from the Union in order to get Biden installed as president. That's what they were willing to do in their war games. The left was. And they talk about it being a street fight, and we can't rely on the norms, meaning the rule of law. It's a dangerous time because of the threats of the left currently in the cities where you have the threats of violence and the willingness of the left to upend the rule of law if the election result is seemingly what they don't want. And Judicial Watch has been analyzing this and seeing what legal steps we can take. Obviously, we're already in court trying to clean up the rolls. Justice Department is completely AWOL on all of this. I mean, Attorney General Barr gets it. He was on Hannity, and he talked about California. He said he had friends from, I guess, who used to live in California, hadn't lived there in 21 years getting ballots. Now, supposedly the ballots aren't going to be mailed to, quote, inactive voters. But the point is, if you've got 1.5 million inactive voters in LA County alone, that suggests the other part of the list is dirty too, don't you think? The president is understating the threat to free and fair elections caused by swamping the mails with nearly 100 million ballots and ballot applications that no one's asked for. So you'll have increased voter fraud for sure. You'll have ballot harvesting with increased voter intimidation for sure. And you're going to have ballots thrown out. In 2016, 319,000 absentee mail ballots were thrown out. We don't have any way of guessing how many would be thrown out this time around because there's no precedent for what's being planned here, which is to break the system. The system is going to break. And we really appreciate the president's shout out for our work. And the fact that we're virtually the only ones doing anything on this tells you everything you need to know. Now, the Republicans are suing, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, to try to stop illegal changes. But remember, Republicans have they've got to encourage people to vote by mail too. They're not going to cede that to just the other political party. So that's why you need an independent group like Judicial Watch saying the best way to make sure your vote is counted is to vote in person. Voting by mail is a bad public policy. Absentee ballots without really having a strong basis to use them is a bad policy. Unsecured absentee ballots is a bad policy. So Republicans have to say, they may not like them, but they have to encourage voters who'd like to vote by the mail to use it anyway. And of course, many of these states have no voter ID. California doesn't have voter ID. 15 big states don't have voter ID, as I've told you before. Only 10 or 11 states have strict voter ID laws, and the rest of the states have voter ID laws, but they're not as strict as they could be. So it's going to be a mess. But Judicial Watch is doing, again, the heavy lifting to try to make sure your votes are counted and the elections are as clean as possible.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.